Hi, I'm Bruce De La Cruz, and this is The Cutting Room Floor, the talk show where we interview local filmmakers, not just to shed some spotlight on some local talent, but also just to get firsthand accounts of what it's like working in the filmmaking industry. And today we're talking with Sidney Facey and Nicole Oziel, two filmmakers that recently won a documentary award challenge. So thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
So,
Yeah, excited to be here.
before we get started talking about the film, why don't you guys each tell us, the audience at home, each about something yourselves, basically. Let's start with Sidney.
Yeah, so my name is Sidney. I work in the commercial space in the film industry, so the non-union side of things. I've been working as a video producer, a camera operator, and director for the last 3 years.
And Nicole?
Hi, I'm Nicole, and I work as a video editor with a video production company. And outside of work, I also freelance doing video editing for short films and documentaries.
Gotcha. And so, for each of you, what inspired you to work in this industry?
For me, I had a passion for documentary filmmaking. In my last year of university, I had to create a short documentary for my thesis project. And that was just such a great experience. I loved the whole process. I also grew up doing a lot of musical theater and wanted to combine kind of my background in acting with and yeah, one thing led to another, and I fell into the field.
Very good. Nicole?
For me, my interest in film started the summer going into my grade 12 year of high school. I decided with a bunch of friends to make a fan film of the Hunger Games. And that was my first experience, making a film. And I had a lot of fun just going through the process of starting out with a script and bringing the story to life, that I decided to look into some film and media programs for post-secondary, and that geared me into the film industry.
Very cool. And you actually both went to the same program, didn't you? Or at least the same school?
Yeah, same program, same school, the University of Guelph Humber for media studies.
Right. And what was that experience like, doing film school?
I wouldn't necessarily call it film school. It was more of a general media program.
Right.
Which was great because you got to get to know the different streams. And then I think in third or fourth year, you got to pick your specialty. And so both Nicole and I did the video production stream, which was more of a general video production. I definitely wouldn't say it's film school.
Right.
Yeah. But it was close. It was close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very cool getting a feel and an introduction to a bunch of different areas in media. We got to touch on journalism and public relations and photography and videography. And we had capstone projects in fourth year where we got to work together. So it was really great getting to see all those different aspects of the industry and getting to try out each one a little bit.
Was there something that surprised you when you were in school that you hadn't previously known about the industry?
Nicole, do you have an answer?
I guess a lot. I guess all the different avenues of film for me. When I first went in, I was very much only thinking, okay, if you're working in film, you're working on these big Hollywood sets. So I guess learning freelancing is a viable route, or working with different companies, and there's so many different avenues to each different type of profession within media.
Right.
That's very true. I think it gave me a wider understanding of what film is and how many marketing agencies or really any company now needs video production services.
So a lot of my other friends that are in filmmaking, and a lot of the other professionals I've worked with, they say that there's not a lot of things that they were taught in school that they still use these days. Do you find that true as well?
Well, for one, our video teacher we were using tungsten lights. I don't know if you guys use that, but nowadays, as soon as I worked on my first film set, they brought out these nice LEDs. I'm like, oh, you don't have to wear gloves to touch these lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we were operating on very old equipment. So like you're learning the same basics and the same, base level of understanding, but it's I think the old equipment was definitely something.
Right.
I think practicality wise, it gave us a good foundation with knowing some of the basics of like how to use different types of gear, or the basics of like, this is how you create a shot list or a storyboard, and working with crews and the beginnings of editing and getting our first few projects made. So it did help like building a good foundation.
Okay, very good. Describe how your careers have been since you've graduated.
Well, for me, I immediately wanted to go into film. Because I didn't go to film school, I was so determined to try and get into the union and work on a really big TV show. And that's exactly what I did. I worked on an Apple TV show called C for 2 seasons, and I worked as an office production assistant. And it was a great experience. I met a lot of great people. It showed me so much about production on such a large level. But then I quickly realized it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, and I was craving that creative job. I was craving more of a hands-on experience. And so there's nothing wrong with going that route, and you can definitely become like a PA and work your way up to a coordinator, or work as like a camera trainee in the union. But I ended up meeting a few people from school, like Nicole, and other people who were freelancing, and then I kind of just tried it out and fell in love with the freelance life.
Very cool. And Nicole, yourself?
Yeah, after graduating, I started out with freelancing, and I did that full time for several months. And I started out like not just with video editing, I did a bit of photography as well. And then a few months after, I was hired for a full-time video editing position, and I'm still with the company, and then I'll freelance on the side as well. And I've really been liking that balance.
Good, good. So I was a freelancer myself before I landed this cushy job hosting shows like this for Conestoga. And I remember there were some really good times and some really okay times. So in your own words, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of being your own boss, basically? Sidney, we can start with you.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, one advantage is that you can kind of create your schedule. So I could go for a workout at noon and no one's going to be calling me and wondering. I mean, it depends on what projects I have. And I can also take on projects, specifically look for clients and projects that I want to work with or kind of fall into that industry. A disadvantage, though, is that you don't have a salary. Like you don't, it can be very unpredictable. There's slow seasons, there's really busy seasons, and you have to learn to balance the unpredictable income. And one tip that I was given that I still use to this day is whatever I made the previous year is what I try and operate off of for the following year, because you don't know what that number is going to be.
That's some really good advice. And I actually have your mission statement from your website on my notes here, Sidney, if you don't mind me reading a few things.
Sure.
Yeah, so you talk about some of your values being one of the one that's like really struck a chord with me was every film has a harmonious balance of creative elements, from visuals to sound and storytelling to pacing, and all elements deserve to be done well. And so taking that into account, can you describe a project where that you freelanced on where everything just kind of fell into place using that as a standard?
Yeah, so actually I would have to go with my most recent project, which was actually a spec project. And for those who are watching who don't know what spec is basically a passion project that you most likely self-fund with other filmmakers, and you create a crew to make either like a documentary, a commercial, a brand video, and that way it goes on your portfolio and you can pitch it to future clients. But my friend and I did one for Bumble, and she DP'd it, I directed it, and then we both produced it. And that was the first time I've worked with over 10 people on the crew. We had a production designer, we had hair and makeup artists, we had a stylist, And it was so amazing because I had this one idea and I was thinking, yeah, I could make this myself. Like I could set up my camera, I could get my friends, and it would be at this like very low level of quality. It could maybe get like 100 likes on TikTok. Like that's
Right.
the level. If I reached out to a friend who's a cinematographer and end up getting a full crew, this idea just became something that was so much better than what I pictured because of everyone's creative collaboration and their expertise. And I had like the stylist created a mood board. Our production designer gave me amazing input that I would have never thought of. So having that experience was just, that is the perfect harmonious level of all of the elements coming together. That's what film is.
Gotcha. It's funny for me because like when I freelance, sometimes I've been in a few situations where there have been too many cooks in the kitchen. But your situation, it's just sounding like very harmonious, like you mentioned. Like everyone was able to bounce off of each other's ideas in a healthy way, which is probably ideal.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think it's a little different because it's a spec and it wasn't necessarily for a paid client.
Yes, exactly.
I think because we fostered that environment right away of wanting other people's input and creativity, that I never felt like anyone was stepping over anyone. It was just everyone was very open.
Right. Nicole, did you want to speak on some of the advantages and disadvantages of being a freelancer and being your own boss?
Yeah, for sure. Well, my experience is like very similar to what Sidney said. I really like that with freelancing, and especially because I also work an outside job as well, that I'm able to like take on projects that I'm really interested in or have a passion about. I also find with freelancing, I get to have for a lot of projects more like creative input or even creative direction, depending on like what aspect of it I'm hired to do, and that's always really fun. Disadvantages is, I guess, like you're always looking for the next project, and even trying to balance that time between like working on the business and working in your business. So like doing your projects, but like trying to bring in the next gigs at the same time too.
Right. I feel like it's such a luxury these days, especially for creatives, just to be able to work on something that they like and not have to worry about money. It's just the industry that we're in. That's just one of the downfalls, I think, of it. I do have a quote from your website as well, Nicole. Don't feel left out. Here on your mission statements or your about page, you talk about how you're passionate about intersectional social justice, social impact, accessibility, empowerment, and encouraging others to celebrate their authentic selves through your video work. What are some of your best examples from those statements that you've been able to work on?
Yeah, one of my favorite ones that I've been able to work on was I was hired as a picture editor for a spot called Joy, and it highlighted the story of a newcomer to Toronto and some of the services that the community had to help the newcomers within their community and get situated. So that was a really great story. And then there was also a short that I got to work on called No, which brought to light just like the impact of sexual violence and showing what it's like for a survivor. So a really heavy topic that brought more awareness to that.
And like, how did that feel to be a part of that? Just to be able to be part of something that spoke to so many people on such a deep level?
I was really happy to be a part of those projects, and I also felt like a level of responsibility to add like depth to the stories and authenticity, and really highlighting the actors' performances to, I guess, do these stories justice and like have the impact that we were going for.
Right. So we've had some really great insight to your individual careers, but now let's talk about the documentary, everything around here. So why don't you tell us about the contest first, and then we can talk about the film itself. Sidney, if you want to start, or Nicole.
Okay, sure. The contest was for the Art of Documentary's one-day doc competition. And I believe they do it twice a year. So we entered the fall 2023 one. And I guess the main like rules of the contest are you have to shoot your documentary in one day. And then they usually announce it at roughly a month before it's due. So depending when you shoot, you have up until the deadline to edit. And then the documentary had to be, I think, between 2 to 8 minutes approximately. And besides that, it was pretty open.
Whose idea was it to take part in the contest?
I think we both wanted to.
Yeah.
But it was Nicole who came to me with the idea of doing it on her grandmother.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So let's get into the actual subject matter of the documentary. What is it about then?
The documentary is about my grandma, and it really explores the idea of the memories that a house holds. She's been living in that house for 50 years, and the documentary shows her preparing to move to a new place. And it captures not just like what that looks like in terms of preparation, but also her reflecting on all the memories she's had there and what she's leaving behind, the memories she's leaving behind too.
Right. Where does the title come from, Everything Around Here, if you don't mind me asking?
Where did it come from? I think we just created it.
It came from like a play on one of the lines she says where everything around, she doesn't say everything around here, everything around is rolly or something like that, like referencing to my grandfather. So we wanted the title to kind of like reference the film somehow, but also that everything around here was reflective of all the things around the house that either my grandfather made or had memories of my grandfather.
That's what I figured, and I was waiting for her to say it in the film. So I just wanted to make sure that's why you called it that. So when I watched it myself, I thought it was really well done. And one of my favorite things is your use of music, and the absence of some of it in some scenes. Like a few scenes, it'll be happy and whatnot, and then as soon as your grandmother talked about your grandfather being in the hospital, it just dead stop. And I thought that was really powerful. Whose idea was that?
I did that in the edit.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was in like the rough draft, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Was that intentional, or where did that come from? Yeah,
that was. I really wanted to use the different elements, sound being one of them, to create the impactful moment and really have the audience sit with the heaviness of like what my grandma was talking about in that section.
And I'm going to talk about that same instance because another thing that I really loved was the B-roll. I felt like it was obvious but subtle at the same time. You could have used when she was talking about your grandfather passing away, you could have just used a photo of him or maybe a tombstone or something, but you used his empty chair to show that he was gone. And I really loved that. Yeah, that was really cool. Did you want to speak on that at all?
Yeah, that was something that we planned on in our pre-production. Was we wanted, in a not, like you said, super obvious way to show him being gone. We wanted to show the impact of him being gone. And the chair was a big part of our documentary, like having my grandma sit in the chair and mentioning like that was his chair. And there's a few B-roll clips where you see him sitting in the rocking chair. So by showing the empty chair, we were really showing the absence of like he used to be there and now he's not. So the audience really feels that absence too.
Either way, it was really well done. And now I understand that this was supposed to be made in under 24 hours. Talk through that process, because like that can't be easy, can it?
So it was filmed. It was supposed to be filmed in under 24 hours. We had about 3 weeks to edit, and then like 6 weeks of pre-production, maybe 3, from the time it was the announcement went out about the competition. But yeah, we filmed it in about 5 or 6 hours, just an afternoon with Marguerite, Nicole's grandmother. And yeah, it was great. I think honestly, when having such a limited amount of time to film, pre-production was so important because Nicole and I literally had 3 or 4 calls where we planned out the shot list and what exactly in the house we wanted to capture, and knowing that this film could only be 8 minutes long max, we had to get very specific about how our B-roll and the story would kind of flow with each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I feel like this film, or like the restraints from it, really pushed you to be more creative with your shots and be more concise. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So was there anything that you would have done differently when filming this or preparing for it?
I would have loved to have had a two camera interview set up if we were able to.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe another camera operator, because it was kind of just me and then a production assistant that we had.
Yeah.
We were kind of doing everything, and plus with the amount of time we had to shoot, it was like, okay, we got to set up, we got to move here, and it worked well because we planned so much ahead of time, but it would have been lovely to have a second camera angle or get some additional B-roll downstairs.
Were there any other challenges that kind of arose during filming that was kind of unforeseen?
I'm trying to think, challenges while we were filming?
Yes.
Honestly, not really. Like, yeah, I didn't know. This is the first time I was meeting Nicole's grandmother, but Nicole kind of briefed her on the entire day. She knew exactly what to expect. And then before we did the formal interview, I sat her down, just asked her a few questions. And then the first 3 questions, I think, that we asked in the interview when I was recording, I asked her again at the end because I knew her answers would be better. And they were, just because she was a lot more comfortable talking to me, and on camera, it delivered so much better.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say the only challenge really was our constraint of time and then only having 2 people to film.
For sure. Nicole, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'd even say, like, extending over into the editing, I think one of the biggest challenges was cutting down our interview. Like, we had a great interview and we had, I think, like 45 to close to an hour, like, content worth of her interview. So, like, being really intentional with stitching together our story and, like, cutting it down and being concise it was a good creative challenge.
Gotcha. In your guys' minds, what makes a good documentary subject?
Ooh. Well, one that has a story, for sure, which a lot of people do if you get to know them. But one that is open to talk about their story. And I think the story specifically, like, this is what actually we learned in our documentary course, but I take it with me for everything now, is that there's always this physical journey. So in this case, it was Nicole's grandmother moving on and selling her house and leaving her house that she lived in for 50 years. But then the emotional journey, which is her leaving the last physical piece she has of her late husband. And so there's always that physical journey of the subject, but then you have to find that, like, metaphysical, emotional journey that goes with it.
Gotcha. Nicole?
Yeah, I think similar to what Sidney said, some things that make, like, a good documentary subject is also someone who's willing to be vulnerable on camera and like showcase their emotions and allow that to be captured so that the audience is also feeling what they're going through. And, like, something that shows a process or someone who has a goal so that there's direction to the story.
Gotcha. And so you guys won the contest. How did that feel when you found out that you won?
Oh, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I think we were both shocked.
Yeah.
We were just so proud and happy with the piece that we made we were happy at that, and I had no idea we were going to win.
Right.
Yeah, we weren't expecting it.
Do you know how many people you beat out from the contest, or is that kind of unknown?
I think they had, like, either over 100, like, global submissions. I don't remember the exact number, just over 100, I think.
I mean,
It was around 200.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's got to be a good feeling, like 200 people all over the world, and now you guys are the winners of that now. So, and there was a monetary prize as well, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you plan to do with the money, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, honestly, reinvest it into making another short documentary, into another spec project.
Good, nice. It was like $2,000, I read somewhere. I think.
Yeah, it was about 2000.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Very good. Very good. We're nearing the end of the interview. You guys are pretty much still kind of at the beginning of your careers. What are some of the things that you guys want to do before you retire? What are some specific goals that you have?
For me,
Yeah.
win an Oscar before 40.
Yeah, that's what they all say. Yeah.
Honestly, though, just create a feature documentary one day, become a commercial director, and just create impactful stories that need to be told. Yeah, I'm really into documenting the human experience, and I love the process, and yeah, I think that's the ultimate goal.
Good. Good. Nicole.
I'd really like to create stories and films that I'm passionate about, especially going further into films that are focused on social impact and social justice. And then more specifically, a big goal that I have for myself is I'd like to edit a narrative feature film that gets a theatrical release.
What are some things that you guys know that you need to work on to become better filmmakers?
I'd say networking.
Networking.
Networking is super important in the film industry, regardless of what position or where you're working in the industry. So constantly reaching out and making connections.
Agreed. Networking is so huge. I also think just getting your reps in. I started off as a videographer, and I still will do videographer type jobs.
Right.
But as you level up, you can't just get paid for the job you want to do when you freelance. You have to prove that you can do that job first. So making spec work, getting your reps in as a director or producer or writer, whatever it is you want to ultimately do, I think it's important to just keep creating.
And so you guys both consider yourselves documentary filmmakers and editors and whatnot. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of documentaries over other media?
Documentaries are just so, a good one is very authentic. I think there's a lot of media out there. It's pretty noisy. Even sometimes just going on Instagram, this is too much. I'm watching too much content. But documentaries, if you really take the time to sit down and watch one, no matter how long it is, I feel like I always learn something new, and I always have a new perspective on something, which is really great.
Nicole?
Yeah, I think documentaries are a form of film that will always have value, and there will always be work for documentaries. I know a very current popular thing coming out is with AI, and I'm not going to pretend I know too much about that or delve too much into that. But I know there's different concerns depending on where you are in film of how much of a tool will it be for us? How much could it potentially replace? Will it start even creating stories and films on our behalf? But you'll never be able to replicate a documentary from AI. So just that authenticity and the humanity that's in documentaries, I think is a huge advantage. Disadvantage, well, kind of disadvantage and advantage at the same time is especially depending on the moments you're capturing, is you don't get that moment again.
Right.
And sure, there's reenactments, but some things are best when you catch them in the moment.
That's some really profound stuff. I'm gonna have to ponder on some of those things later there, guys. One thing that I did want to ask about the film, one last question about the film, was were you happy with the impact that it had on everyone that you've shown it to so far?
Yeah, and surprised how relatable it is to so many. people, but it's been great, like, seeing people's reactions and how much it resonates with everyone that's watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been surprising to see people's reactions. I think it almost seems somewhat relatable because everyone has a friend carrying a
parent that's going through a similar transition in life. But it was interesting how many people thought she was going off to a retirement home after, which she isn't. But like, because we don't say specifically where she's going, it's just cool how people have their own perspective of it and can relate it back to their own personal lives.
Exactly. And so the final question for the interview for both of you is, what advice would you give to other local filmmakers, documentary filmmakers that are trying to break it into the industry?
Network as much as you can.
Right.
Like, get yourself out there, like, go to the events. And if you're in school, like, whether it's for film or not, like, build those connections with your peers too. Like, there's a lot of value in connecting with your peers and collaborating on projects together. Like, find those communities and keep networking.
Sidney?
Yeah, agreed. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to slide into people's DMs you don't even know. Just a little like, hey, I love your work. This is what I do. Never hurts. The worst case, they don't respond. That's not even that bad. And then don't be afraid to share your work. I think for the longest time, I was really afraid to share my work because I heard this quote and I forget who says it, but he basically says that at first you have good taste and you get into this industry because of your taste, but your actual quality of work is not the best. And you have to make kind of bad stuff to be able to make the good stuff. And the thing that carries you through is your taste. So don't be afraid to put out quote unquote bad stuff on the internet to share your work, because the point is you're doing it and that's already, better than not just hiding it away and like cringing at it. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to be a little cringy.
Gotcha. Words to live by. And so that's the end of the interview. I just want to say thank you again so much, guys, for your insight and your stories. This is going to help so many people on their journey. Thank you again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.